Can go down the road of me leaving home and going down the road of, crime or trouble or doing all sorts on the street just to try and make a living. Or you can think to yourself, well, I want to try and make something of my life.
I welcome the incredible, the awesome, extremely muscular Ricki Marley. When did you realise that you were going to work for yourself?
Leaving home from a young age, not having good family around me or parents around me, and felt like I was most of the time on my own. But I think what kind of kept me going was I was never scared of hard work. I haven't got a mum and dad that I can ring up and say, I've got nowhere to live, can I come back home? That didn't happen. So when I haven't got any other choices or alternatives, I have to make it work. Everything takes time. Someone could be looking at me now, okay, he's got loads of properties, but they don't know that I've been investing for the past 20 years.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So before we begin today's podcast, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Casita Properties, the UK leading property company. When it comes to off-market discreet buy-to-let sales, you know the drill. All of the links will be in the description below. I welcome the incredible, the awesome, extremely muscular Ricki Marley. Look at the guns on those. On that. Look at those. There we go. Ricki is not only an absolute unit, but Ricki, you are a business owner, property entrepreneur, and so much more. And we're going to dive into it. And we're going to take it to another level. We're going to actually tap into who is Ricki and the journey and everything you've been through, which is what I'm really keen to find out. So firstly, thanks so much for joining me, mate.
Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a good podcast. So let's do the usual. I like to start and find out more about Ricki growing up. Like, what was your childhood like? Where did you come from? How did it all merge to where you are today?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I had a tough upbringing. In fact, my early childhood memories was of my dad having his own business. He did have his own business, but he wasn't great with cash flow, and he wasn't really around that much. It got to a point where my mum and dad split up, and we ended up in a refuge. The house got repossessed. He lost the business and everything. Me and my mum and my sister ended up in a refuge, and we basically just stayed like that for a few years. And from there, it kind of got tough with my mum as well, because she suffered severe depression because of it all. She suffered severe depression. We ended up in a council flat, and she got to a point where she actually got sectioned for a little while. So it was for a few years, it just carried on like that until we got to about 10 years old. My mum couldn't cope anymore. So me and my sister actually went and moved in with my dad. Complete opposite, proper strict, proper regimental, made me do paper rounds and leave money on the table for the bills at the end of each week, took me to air cadets, which was, in hindsight, a good thing for me because it taught me a lot of discipline, But I couldn't take it no more. When I got to about 15, 16 years of age, I left home and went to move in with my boss at the time.
So you've had a real sort of insight to what I like to call hardship. Like, nothing was given to you on a plate.
No.
And I think what I really want to take away from that is how did that sort of mold you to where you are now? Because if that was your upbringing, you've seen and you've gone through things that were quite tough, especially if you're living with someone who had depression, and that must have been really tough to see your mum's section, because I know a very close story that's very close to me that went very through a similar thing, and I know that really affected them. So how did you find that?
It was tough, but when you're in that situation, there's nothing it can go two ways. It can go down the road of me leaving home and going down the road of, crime or trouble or doing all sorts on the street just to try and make a living, i.e. selling drugs, whatever. Or you can think to yourself, well, I want to try and make something of my life and take the other road. And that's the road that I took. But I think the fact that my dad was quite strict on me at the time, it taught me a lot of discipline. And that kind of helped me get through it. But I think leaving home at 16 and moving with my boss, he was another major influence in my life at that time as well. So I think having him around also molded me to the person that I am now.
And so moving in with your boss, how did that change your mindset? Because I imagine if you're surrounded with someone, was this an owner of a business, or was this just someone who...
Yeah, he was actually owner of a business, a flooring business, and he was also into property as well, which is quite strange because ended up taking the same road. But I didn't have nothing else. When I left home at 16, I didn't have any money at all, nothing. So I moved in with him and slept on the bedroom floor with his sons. He had 3 sons. And 3 of those sons used to work for his dad. They used to go out carpet fitting, and I used to go with them and do all the donkey work, basically. I learned how to put all the underlaying grippers down, and I watched. And I was just watching him, what he was doing, how he, grew the business. And it just, for some reason, I mean, I've always been that sort of person that's quite ambitious and quite curious, always been into that business mindset. I don't know how or why, from a young age, I've always been like that. So having him around and seeing what he was doing heavily influenced me.
I think when you're around older people who are in business, people who are doing their own thing, running their own lives, I think what it does is it opens up your eyes to the possibilities. And I think if you're not around people like that, you never really know it. Because my next question to you is, when did you realise that you were going to work for yourself? And what I mean by that is we all go through that period of, I've been fully employed. I've worked for a big corporate company. I could never really settle, and I always knew that this wasn't for me long term. I didn't know when I'd get out of it. And did you go through a period of thinking, eventually I just know I'm going to work for myself?
When I moved in with my boss, he used to pay me, this was 16, I'm 44 now, over 20 years ago. He used to pay me £25 a day, which was peanuts. Even back then it was peanuts. By the end of the week, it was about £150. By the end of the month, I didn't really have much money left. And it was at that point I thought to myself, I don't really want to live my life like this, like earning, a mediocre wage, and then by the end of the month, not having nothing left to your name. And you kind of end up in that vicious cycle of having to go to work and then have nothing at the end and then doing the same thing over again. But the way I saw it at that point was, it was kind of I actually learned to become a carpet fitter through his sons, and that was what I was focused on. It wasn't the money that I was earning, and I knew that by learning that trade and the potential of the amount of money that I can earn doing that can open more doors. And that's how I looked at it. I stayed with him for about 2 or 3 years and managed to save up a few grand from it. Made a lot of sacrifices, not going out, not going drinking with my friends. Other than working and going to the gym at that point as well, I was trying to save up some money, and I did. When I got a few grand, that's when I left him. And then the next phase of my life happened,
Which is when you started your business. I just want to go over that. For anyone watching, you just said it. You said absolute fundamentals. In order to pursue something better, you saved money, you were smart, you didn't go out drinking, you didn't do the traditional, what everyone does when they're young. Isn't it funny how it's almost promoted bad habits, but good habits, like going to the gym twice a day, eating healthy, saying no to not going out, that's considered strange.
Yeah.
But yet smoking, drinking and wasting money is almost the norm. I find that totally backwards. So that's obviously, we're going to get onto your discipline, because your physique speaks discipline. We've spoken multiple times. Your mindset speaks discipline. And I don't think it's necessarily motivation. I think it's routine, sacrifice, and a really good structure, which we'll get into. So when you started to break away and you started to go into business, what were your thoughts, feelings, emotions? Because also business is quite scary when you start to venture into it.
100%. So when I left my boss at the time, I actually met a girl, and she had a flat in Finsbury Park, and I actually moved in with her. And by then I was a qualified carpet fitter. I knew how to fit carpet quite well. I was quite good at it. And I bought myself a van, a shitty little diesel van. I remember I only had about 2 or 3 grand saved up. So I bought this van. It stunk of fish. I paid $5.50 for it. Had a yellow siren on the top. That's all I can afford at the time. Bought some tools, and then approached some local carpet shops in that area. And from earning £150 a week, I'm now earning £150 a day fitting carpet. I set up a little office in a flat, and I used to put adverts out in the local newspaper, advertising to do free estimates and whatnot. I had samples. I used to go around, measure up people's properties, give them a price, and then go back and fit the carpets. And that's when my earnings started to take over, started to...
The question I want to know though, did you get down to what the fish smell was?
It was just used as a fish van,
Couldn't
get rid of it.
When you started, you just touched on advertisement. This is something I talk massively about, because advertisement is the same as marketing, but people get cross with those words. Is that how have you seen marketing change? So you've gone from that newspaper, leaflets, flyers, business cards to, I mean, we're all online. So how have you found the change in terms of, did you get lots of business from old school advertisement to what you get to now?
Not really, because the problem is that, especially in my position at that time, I didn't have a lot of money behind me. So putting adverts out in newspapers like The Loot, Yellow Pages, I don't know if you remember that, you're probably not old enough, used to cost a bit of money. So I used to put like little tiny adverts. And I think at that time, you was always told that the bigger the advert, the more response you're going to get. But I just stuck with my tiny little adverts. And what I focused on was building good rapport with the customers that I was working with so that they could do word of mouth and tell other people my job and my prices. And that helped me grow the business.
So your experience in the advertisement and today's marketing, just for the audience and everyone that's going to watch this, because this is something that we're all doing right now, like how important is it that we're all marketing? Because it's basically what makes a business. I always say you can pretty much compete against any business as long as you have a good marketing budget.
Yeah.
You can go up against anyone, in my view, as long as you've got a good marketing strategy. So into your business journey, how important is marketing now?
I mean, it's very important, but I think we've got better opportunities now compared to what it was 20 years ago. You don't have to put adverts in newspaper or do leaflets so much. If you've got, a good personal brand, you can use social media to your advantage, But building up good followers, documenting your journey, providing good content is a good way of marketing yourself,
And how have you found it staying on top of it? Because that's the other thing. We're not in the day and age where we need radio, we need ads and stuff like that. But you have got to be on social media all the time. So do you manage all your social media? Because that's another thing. It's so time consuming. How do you find that?
It's like a full-time job, to be honest.
Literally.
But you know what? The way I look at it is that I'm basically documenting my journey as it is. And so it's not that difficult for me to post regularly on Instagram or TikTok. It does take time, but I think if you're consistent, I think anything in life, as long as you're consistent, that's when you start seeing the rewards, So for me, I just feel like it's part of the business. It's part of something that I need to do, promoting myself on social media.
So where you've got yourself to now, I just want to find out a little bit more about some of the struggles that you go through, because we always talk, we tend to show a lot of the good side. And when I come on social media, I try and show the good, the bad and the ugly. I've kind of got a bit of a thing now where I'm trying to show my good days, but also when business or personal life isn't going that great, I'm trying to show that as well. I think it's important to be open and transparent. How have you found getting through the harder times? Because we can make life look very good to the outside. But for me personally, there have been some days where I have thought, I'm going to go and read and I'm going to find a fucking forklift job because I've had enough. Literally, I can't keep spinning all these plates. We've had days like that. It's tough. Like, it's really, really tough. And sometimes I just think you lose vision and you just think, I'm just going to give up. But I don't. How do you get through really hard times? And what hard times have you had where you've sat there in the house on your own?
To be honest, like I said, leaving home from a young age, not having, a good family around me or parents around me, and felt like I was most of the time on my own. But I think what kind of kept me going was I was never scared of hard work. And I think the more I put myself into working hard and committing myself, the more rewards that you see. So for me, I think starting my business, because starting from actually an office in a flat to then opening up a shop and just continuing to grow step by step, I think that helped me to keep growing and going, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But
setting yourself targets. Once you get to that point, you want to, set another target and just keep going.
And how do you find you're able to push through? Because, if you're not constantly surrounded by people who are giving you validation, which some people seek, it's, as an entrepreneur or business owner, it's funny, isn't it? We talk to a lot of people, we're surrounded by a lot of people, we engage with a lot of people, but actually, it's actually quite lonely. So how do you keep going? And I want this message to kind of relate to people thinking, fuck, I feel alone.
Yeah, I mean, but I've always felt alone. Sometimes I've always kept myself to myself by purpose, because it's quite easily, you can get influenced by other people. And that's what I didn't want to happen. I had my clear vision. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to set my own business. I knew I needed to make that business grow. I had people around me that used to work for me, but never had people trying to tell me what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. Do you know what I mean? So I think maybe it's because I didn't have a choice. It's basically I've got to make it work. I have to make it work.
Yeah.
Because I haven't got a mum and dad that I can ring up and say, I've got nowhere to live. Can I come back home? That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So when I haven't got any other choices or alternatives, I have to make it work. I have to set up that business. I have to make it work.
Yeah.
I have to produce profit and then use that money to maybe invest into assets, which I've done, and just keep growing, just keep growing. And when you start seeing the money coming in and you can see the achievements that you make, that kind of gives you inspiration to keep going,
When your back is against the wall is sometimes where you can really come out and shine.
Yeah.
And it's like the old saying, diamonds are formed under pressure. And I think so many people, they're scared to take the risk. And we say risk like it's a massive risk. There's like we said before, there's a risk in everything. But if you only dip your toe in, you're never really going to know. You're not going to have that heat on your back, and that pressure. And I think that's where most people thrive. Yeah. They just don't know it. When people are talking about, I want to get out of work, I want to start a business, what would you say to people? The first few things you need to do, like if you want to start a side business, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, what are kind of your top tips for someone who is wanting to start something of their own, but they just have no idea where to start? Like they know they've got that fire, but they're just like, where the fuck do I start?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, if I look back on my business journey, if I think about carpets and flooring, it's not something that I desire to get into. If I thought to myself, I want to sell some carpets, it doesn't excite me. But it's because of what I was grown into, like what I was surrounded with. But, if you've got something that you enjoy doing, a passion, then I think you've got a good chance of making it work. If you're getting in something that you don't enjoy, then it won't work. You've got to enjoy what you're doing.
Because you've got to get through the hard times.
Yeah, I think it's easier nowadays as well. Like I said, with social media, and a lot of businesses that you can do online as well. Don't forget, I opened up a shop. I had the responsibility of paying rent, looking after staff, paying wages, VAT, and that's harder now. So for you to start off with an idea, if you can implement something online and do some sort of online business where you don't have to risk maybe too much of your own capital to get it started, then what can go wrong?
Do you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up. You were opening up a business where you had a physical asset. You don't have to do that anymore. So when people say, Aaron, what's the recipe? You keep talking about starting a business and this whole risk thing. There's not a huge, this is what I don't get. There's not a huge amount of risk. You calculate and you mitigate as much as you can. But I would also say there's three things. You need to be around the right people because they're going to influence your opportunities and what you do. 2, you need to constantly learn because you need to become of value to some form of a market. And then 3, you just need to be online because if COVID taught us anything, physical products or physical assets that you have to look after can be a problem in the face of a pandemic. So you have to be online. You moved into property. You went from the carpet business. Property is quite hard. It's far reaching for some people, depending on where you live in the country. But obviously there's a monetary reward at any business. Property, you're bringing in money, but what does money mean to you? Because I'm having a lot of debates at the moment with people, and I think it's a mindset thing. We can't blame the physical money. It's in the hands who hold that money. What does money mean to you?
Money's always been a driver, not so much now, but at the early stages of my life, it's always been a driver. And I've always said to myself, I want to get to, right at the beginning, I want to get to $5,000. So that would be my set amount each month, because I know I can then live a bit comfortable at that point. At that stage of my life, I knew what my mortgage payments was and my expenses, etc. So $5,000 was my target to say, right, I'm going to be quite comfortable with this. And then you get to $5,000 and then you realize, well, I actually want 10 grand. And so your targets keep changing, right? So for money for me means having your time freedom and financial freedom. And that's what properties allow me to do. I actually sold my business back in 2018 to focus on my property journey, because now my portfolio has reached to a level where it's providing me a good enough income for me to be able to do that. But at the same time, I've got my time now. I've actually got time on my hands that I can actually do something else if I want to. I felt like I was tied to that business, which was one of my mistakes in hindsight, being tied to that bricks and mortar business and not delegating and trusting other people to run it and taking a little bit of a step back. That was one of my regrets. But yeah, that's what money means to me. It's giving me that financial and time freedom.
That's where I think a lot of people get confused. When they see people who want to start business, they want to do well, they want to earn a good revenue, they talk about, I want to earn this amount of money. Instantly, they jump the gun and think, oh, you pompous twat. You just want to earn money. And I think 99% of the time, they're wrong. And I would say, because you've got children, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do you agree that when you have children, that's when you really adulthood? Because it's not about you anymore. There is a bigger picture other than me and you.
Yeah.
There's someone we've got to look after now. And if you've got money, you can have a good life with that child. What's our role as parents? To make sure they make it to a certain age where they can look after themselves. And money will allow an easier process along the way. And I think there's this confusion around, if you want more money, it's all about the watch, the car, and unfortunately, sometimes they tie the two, don't they? Social media, what goes out there. But you know what? If you can afford to drive a Ferrari, a Porsche, a Lambo, why not? If you've worked hard for it. And we've said this before, I don't know if you're aware of this too much, but in America, they love talking about business and money. Over here, it's all...
Bit of a stigma.
Ricki, will you stop bragging, all right? You got bigger muscles than me and Paul. You know, stuff like that. It's like, it's taboo to talk about success.
Yeah.
And I think we need to change the narrative over here, is that we should be having conversations saying, Ricki, you're doing fucking amazing. Tell me how you're doing it. I want to learn.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's about learning, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, how much do you spend sort of learning, networking, being around other people?
I mean, to be honest, it's only been the past couple of years I've been doing more networking. I haven't really done a lot of networking before. I've always been so into my business at the time that nothing else around me really mattered, to a point where I've had a few failed relationships as well because of it, you know, because of the commitment. I used to work long hours, you know, thinking about the business all the time. So it's a bit of a tough one because, you know, like I said earlier, I found it difficult to delegate and get staff in that I could trust to run the business. Always felt, and that's the reason why I sold it in late 2018. I just didn't want it to control me anymore, you know. But yeah.
Well, I want to touch on that if you don't mind. Social media can be amazing. We can start businesses, we can market to the world, we can generate all the revenue that we want, and we can pretty much achieve most things through really smart marketing. However, I just want to touch on the fact about how damaging it is, because it can be really, really toxic. You mentioned about your relationship. I know that it puts pressure on it. I've felt it. And a lot of people are. I don't think I've ever heard in the last 2 years so many divorces. And I guarantee you there's a tie. How did you find that? Because I find it hard to switch off. I know many people, but where is that fine line? And what was your experience through a breakup? And how much, if you're being honest with yourself, played a part of you couldn't switch off?
I think the problem is if you're quite an ambitious person and you've got a lot of drive in you and you want to do well and succeed, you've got to put a lot of time and effort into it. So I think in hindsight, maybe I didn't have the right partner behind me to support what I was doing, because at the end of the day, it would have been for both of us and the future if we had children, etc. If you want a nice house, you got to work for it. Do you know, you can't just expect anything to land on your lap, especially if, you know, you haven't been given a silver spoon and a good start in life. So, I mean, I've been able to switch off and relax a bit more because I'm now 44 years of age and I've done 20 years of hard graft. But that's only because I've been able to build up the property portfolio that I've got in the background that's going on now, that's giving me that, you know, income. But it doesn't mean to say that I'm going to just sit back and do nothing. I'm still going to, you know, go out there and continue to buy properties and do what I'm doing. And maybe I've even got a thought of setting up another business, an online business, you know, so nothing will stop me. You've got to find people that's going to support you, rather than dragging you down, because otherwise, you're not going to succeed. That's my thoughts on that.
I think we live in such a tough world where, especially for 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are seeing this world where everyone's half naked, everyone's ripped, you know, women have beach bodies, everyone looks like they've got money. Like, mentally, it's challenging. I really think people are going to struggle. But how do you get away from it? There's no getting away from it. This is the world that we live in. And I suppose a question to you is, how far do we go? Like, as entrepreneurs and business owners, I know what you mean. To commit and make something really successful, your foot has to be fully pressed against the pedal. Because otherwise, if you do it half-hearted, it's going to be a waste of time, possibly waste of money. It may never pull off and you could be in a really bad position. You have to go at it. But what is the cut-off point? Like, who do we cut out of our lives and what relationships do we destroy or just don't work? Like, how far do we go?
Yeah, I mean, it is a fine balance. I mean, thankfully I found a partner that was supportive, and she actually opened up my eyes a little bit, because I never used to take a holiday. I was that bad. I would never take a holiday. I wouldn't want to walk away from the shop, you know. But she opened my eyes a little bit. Certain events that happened in our lives opened up my eyes. Started taking more holidays, and in fact, I realised that if I took a little bit of a step back from the business and did trust my staff a little bit, the business still run. It didn't like go bankrupt overnight. So sometimes you've got to take a little bit of a step back and realise yourself. But I think for me as well, it can be mentally challenging, and going to the gym on a regular basis helped me do that as well, take out a lot of stress and anger that was all, you know, pented up. But it's tough because, like I said, if you've got a lot of ambition and drive, I always speak to a person that I know that I look up to, actually, and he's got probably around about 80 properties, and he's still buying now. He's in his 60s. And I say to him, why are you still buying? Like, why don't you just go and relax on the beach somewhere and just, you know, you've got enough money coming in. Why don't you just chill? He goes, I'll get bored. I need something to... So I guess, you know, at the beginning, it's all about the money. You want to start earning the money. And then as you go through your journey and you've got the money coming in, it's no longer about the money. It's now something that just keeps you mentally stimulated. You want that challenge. You want something to wake up to and keep you motivated. And that's what happens, you know?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I know enough people that have financially, you know, children, their grandchildren will be absolutely fine. And I think you're absolutely right. In the beginning stages, it's all about the money, because I suppose that's the instant drive, because you know, you don't do it just for charity. No. You don't. No business owner goes into business for charity. It's about the money. But then when you see it coming in, you're like, okay, what can I do with it? I think for me, when I know that people want to do well, they're mentally challenged in the sense of what to do, because there's so many options. Social media has so many positive outcomes. Marketing, starting a business, you know, you can literally go from 0 followers viral overnight. Like, there's so many pros, but at the same time, it's so damaging in terms of we're always comparing ourselves with other people, like someone else's journey. You know, what's Ricki doing? How's Ricki achieved that compared to what I've done? Like, no one really knows a background. What would be your sort of final tips to anyone watching that wants to get into any type of career or just wants to do really well in life in what is described as a very busy world? Like, what would your top tips be for someone?
You know what? Look, I mean, you mentioned something there about comparing yourself to others, and even I might do it. Even till now, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm 44. That guy's 44. He's got 50 properties. I've only got 30. Why is that? You know, what is he doing that I could be doing? And it happens. But I think you've got to realize that you are your own competition. You wake up each morning, look at yourself in the mirror and say, what can I do today that's going to make a difference? Don't worry about anyone else, because they could have inherited some money. They could have, you know, been helped by other people in different ways. You don't know. But as long as you don't compare yourself to others in that way, and you just look at yourself and you know that you're doing the best that you can, everything takes time. You know, someone could be looking at me now, okay, he's got loads of properties, but they don't know that I've been investing for the past 20 years. You know, so it's never too late either. I think you've just got to be consistent. And like I said, each day you wake up, make changes so you know that you're going to improve yourself on a regular basis. Even right now, before I bought this current property that I've just bought that I'm working on, I was in a comfortable position. I had a few quid in the bank, rents are coming in, didn't really have nothing going on in the background. I was in the gym for 2 hours a day, doing the school runs every day, but I was comfortable, and I was also bored, and also felt like I wasn't achieving anything. And so now I've put myself in an uncomfortable position by buying this current property and doing things that I've never done before. So I'm hoping by doing this, I'm going to continue to grow. And not only that, I can actually learn new stuff that I can actually pass on and teach others as well to help them, you know?
Just constantly self-developing.
Yeah.
Self-improvement.
100%.
You never sit still, never be stagnant.
No.
I mean, that's a massive thing for me. Keep learning all the time, listening to books. I mean, as you know yourself, being in the gym, at least for me, once or twice a day sometimes, is a massive headspace in order to reflect, reset and go again. And it's routine and discipline. I think really is the result to most successes. And cutting out bad habits, that's the other thing. You know, how many bad habits do I have? Not a lot. I don't know how many you have, but you know, I wouldn't turn around and say I have too many. I'm sure other people do, but I just think trying to stay very
at the
strict.
same time, that's okay though. You can have a bad habit.
Yeah.
You know, you might be really committed to going to the gym and really eating healthy, and then really feel guilty that on a Sunday you're going to have a roast dinner and a packet of crisps. You shouldn't feel guilty. That's your reward.
Oh, is that your bad one?
Yeah,
Mine's
yeah.
like a massive curry, Ricky. I mean, that's still pretty clean, veg, chicken. Make me feel bad over here. Ricky, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. We've taken a lot from it. I know a lot of people are going to learn from this, and that's what it was about. You know, taking that information so people can go away and learn and hopefully apply something from your experiences. So, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people reach out to connect with you?
Instagram is Streets Ahead Property, and you know what? My TikTok, I think it's Streets Ahead Property as well. But if they follow me on Instagram, they can follow me on
Ricki
Instagram.
Marley. Well, all the description will be in the link below. Everyone who's watched, thanks so much, and we'll see you all very soon.